5 ways you can make your RC helicopter easier to fly. Let's go. Number 1, your transmitter. So if you have a ready to fly helicopter like this, you'll get everything you need to get going and try out the hobby, which is great. There's one small problem. The transmitter is very basic. Although certainly good enough to get you going, if you stick with the hobby, you'll need something a lot better. Like this. Not only is a better transmitter essential for implementing some of these tips, it will give you far more control over some of the other things I mentioned too. Aside from more functionality, just an improved feel on the sticks will take your flying up a notch or two. Let me explain. After flying with the DXE for a bit and starting to get to grips with flying a bit, I thought, I'm sure I get this, my flying should look better than this. So when I splashed out on our new DX9, my flying skills went up a level overnight. I think the main reasons for this is the DXE has a more defined center point. So very gently, it forces you or encourages you right back to center when it's not always where you want to be, or makes you apply slightly big inputs than necessary because you use that little bit extra force to move out of center. This may sound strange to some people, but remember, we're talking tiny, accurate corrections. I haven't used every transmitter of course, but getting a decent transmitter will definitely help. Number 2, your setup. Some of these other points coming up could come under setup too, but I mean more like mechanical setup for now. Your helicopter should be fairly stable relatively speaking. It's not going to hover completely in place for a long time like an advanced GPS drone, but it should at least roughly hang around in one place without too much effort for a bit. It shouldn't quickly drift away if you leave it level. It's too much to go over in detail here and now, but some of the things to consider are things like swash plate being level, servo neutral position, and center of gravity of your helicopter. There's often not a huge amount that can be done to change the center of gravity, but you can try changing the battery position like this. For example, the 230S is known to be a bit tail heavy, which is helped a bit by placing the battery as far forward as possible, like this. Some people even add a little bit of weight, maybe inside the canopy, but I haven't found it necessary myself. Check the center of gravity by placing the blades horizontally and picking it up like this. Just let it balance on the top of your fingers so you don't grip it and affect the result. It should balance fairly flat. If not, try and make some adjustments. Number 3, dual rates. Okay, dual rates are simple. Dual rates just change the amount the control surface can move. Watch this. So I'm currently in low rates and maximum roll gives me 9.7 degrees. If I change to high rates, the maximum blade angle is now 12.9, 13 degrees. The beauty of having a programmable transmitter, as mentioned earlier, is that you control what these rates actually are. You can also have more than just dual rates. You can have triple rates with 3 different settings if you really want, but you probably won't need it. The effect of using dual rates is that by using lower rates, it makes your helicopter less responsive and reduces how fast your helicopter can pitch and roll. This will make it easier to handle and you're less likely to crash when learning. Number 4, expo. Expo is another setting that can make a huge difference to how your helicopter flies. What it does is change the sensitivity around center stick. So it doesn't change the maximum pitch or roll rates, it just moves the control surfaces a smaller amount when your cyclic is near the center and more when the cyclic is near the limits of its travel. Let me explain. This is a settings graph on my DX9 of control inputs on the x-axis versus blade angle on the y-axis. See the straight line? That means linear, as in no expo. The controls move the blade angle at the same amount wherever the stick is. Now this is what a lot of expo looks like. It's an exponential graph. That's what expo means. This is more than you'd ever use, but it's just to show how it works. So as I start to move the cyclic, it doesn't do much. Then near the ends, it will move a lot more quickly. The reason for this is it will soften the effect of your control inputs, which as a beginner are likely to be a bit too big and jerky. As you improve, you might find you want the more responsive feel of using less expo, but you may want to use a lot of expo forever. It's all just personal preference. Number 5, flybarless gain. This is a bit more advanced now, and you probably won't need to adjust this if you've set all the other things well. I'd actually suggest not touching this unless you really need to. I'll be doing a more in-depth video on this sometime, so subscribe if you want to see that and bang the bell. For now, we'll keep it very basic.
Basic as fuck.
Gain is broken down into P, I, and D gains for both cyclic and the tail. Stick with cyclic for now, it's more important really. P means proportional, I means integral, and D means derivative. The P gain controls the initial response of the flybarless unit. So if there's a big difference between pitch or roll rate commanded by you and its current pitch or roll rate, it will try and do what it's told faster if the P gain is higher. So you could consider turning down the P gain a bit to slow your helicopter down a bit to make it easier. The I gain basically deals with fine corrections around where it should be. If you turn the I gain up a bit, it could help the helicopter maintain its attitude and stay where you put it. The D gain kind of helps your helicopter predict the future. It deals with how the helicopter comes to a stop in terms of pitch or roll, or your off the tail gain. If you turn up the D gain a bit, it can help your helicopter's rotation come to stop a bit more smoothly and stop it overshooting if it does. Hold on a minute though guys, there are some essential points to know before you go fiddling here. Firstly, just don't do it unless you really have to. It's a last resort, making the last few % difference. Second, if you really must, then make sure you note down the default settings before you start. It can go crazy if you get it wrong, so make sure you know how to reset it to something okay. Third, P, I, and D are all interrelated and they all affect each other, so don't just turn something up to the maximum or minimum. Your helicopter will most likely have lots of wagging, wiggling, vibrations and oscillations. PID is like a recipe. Pinch of salt can make all the difference, but pour in a bucket and it's ruined. So small changes is the order of the day. Maybe 5 at a time.